It's great to be back here. I do represent Wichita, which we call air capital of the world. You know, one quarter of every plane flying in the world today was made in Wichita. And whether it's every Learjet, all the Beechcraft, almost all of the Cessnas, as well as every 737 cockpits and fuselages made in Wichita, put on a train and sent out to Washington State to have the wings and the wheels added onto it. So there's a lot of aviation history there, as well as a lot of other manufacturing throughout the community and around in South Central Kansas. The other aspect is we have a lot of other agriculture and oil and gas and the feeding into that manufacturing process. So when we talk about how important it is, tax issues, there's obviously a lot of things there that drive what we look at. And I was we don't have enough time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about going back to 2017 and where the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act where we started and what our situation was. You know, we were being told we needed to accept the new normal of 1% growth. We were told that except the median income should be in the mid to high 30s for roughly 30 years. That foreign companies should come in and buy U.S. companies in a process called inversions. Had $4 trillion trapped overseas. We were the fourth highest tax rate in the world, and all of that we were looking to change, and we were starting to lose our superiority in terms of research and development and new innovation. And so I've really focused on how do we continue to grow that? How do we continue to make research and development a keystone in the United States? So what we put into TCJA was making sure that we could have 100% deduction of R&D cost in the first year that they're incurred. And unfortunately, the way the rules end up going, and since there's 3 House members here, I'll trash the Senate here. They took a great TCJA and made it a really good one by dumbing down some of the provisions, and one of those was expiring the R&D as well as depreciation and interest deductibility. And what we've seen is actually a drop-off. R&D was growing about 6.6% in terms of spending before 2022. After that, it's grown less than 0.5%, just because companies don't have the cash flow to manage that. So I've really focused on that as a standalone bill, focused on it through our innovation tax team, and how do we make sure that we continue to grow and push forward. And I want to put one little other plug in while I'm here is one of the other things that we're able to get into the tax bill that we're working on reconciliation was to be able to have musicians deduct their recording cost the year they occur, which basically is the same thing as immediate depreciation. For some reason, when the law was written years ago, TVs and movies could do that, but songwriters couldn't, and producers. And of course, as you know, my chief, he's part of Tornado Rose, and he's got a band, he and his wife, and so obviously it was I had to do it, otherwise I wouldn't have peace in the office. But it's a good idea that musicians can focus on their music instead of focus on taxes. So I'm going to stop there, and if we have questions or other comments afterwards. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. A lot of friends in the room. I look at the tax code. First of all, the reason the tax code changing all the time is the reason I ran for Congress. I've been in politics before, but I'm a person that said I never want my grandkids to look at me when I'm 80 years old in a rocking chair on the front porch and I wish I'd done something. So when I got here, Kevin McCarthy then asked me in the minority, he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be on Ways and Means. He laughed, and I said, well, what's the pathway? I said, I assure you I'll be on there. I'll give you no reason not to put me on Ways and Means. He said, well, either budget or rules. And I said, rules sounds really restrictive, and so I got on budget and got on Ways and Means 2 years later. But it's probably the most enjoyable time that I have is working on tax policy, because I know how important it is to small businesses, and individuals. And when I look at this, and all of my years working as the economics guy for McDonald's franchisees for about 7 years, representing 3,500 franchisees to the McDonald's Corporation, which multi-billion-dollar deals. We never negotiated in the press, which I will tell you probably the reason that we did so much work, and Greg and I were just talking about this a minute ago, the reason this has worked out so well in Ways and Means because nobody said anything over all of these weeks and months about what the tax work was, and therefore we could go a little bit and then we could think about it and come back and change it. And when you start talking in the press, you can't do that. But I like to summarize things in very small, simple to understand analogies so that everybody can be involved, not just people who want to think they're really smart. And the tax code really is simple as this. There's three things that really drive our economy in the United States of America. And that's our corporate rate, that's our individual rates that we all pay because they are directly responsible for the parity rates that our pass-throughs pay with 199A. Everything else is about speeding up or slowing down that car. And so we were able not only to keep the corporate rate, because as you know, there was a lot of conversation about using corporate rate for pay-fors. There was a lot of conversation about corporate SALT and all of those things. But when you took corporate SALT and you reduced the ability to look at those as far as tax deductions, they effectively raised the corporate rate. And the last thing you want to do when you're in a dead heat economically with the largest superpower in the world, us, and then the second, which is China, is to raise your rates higher than your competitor. And then when you look at the individual rates, do no harm to individuals across America. All of us as individuals, we're that. When everything else, the dust settles, we're individuals. And then our pass-throughs representing some 30 million plus small businesses. At the end of the day, that's the way you get immediate tax flow to the economy is through pass-throughs. If you move it over to S-Corps, you can delay paying taxes by doing other things, withholding dividends to the individual. You can do a lot of stuff. So forcing S-Corp to make that decision based on bad tax policy would not be very smart. So I think we've gotten to a good spot. And we've added a lot of things, as Ron mentioned, about R&D expensing and immediate expensing and 163J, and the list goes on and on and on, that we're really trying to drive this car very fast. I personally believe that, the way CBO scores this and some of the outside groups, they think that you all are really ignorant about individually of spending your money in your communities, that small businesses have no idea what they're doing, and corporations are evil. And so all of those are, it's what makes us grow. It's what makes us special. That's why we want to keep our tax code to be the most and the best place to be in the world. So, my dear friend Randy Feenstra, I'm glad they put the tall guy in the middle.
Well, thank you. It's great to see all the friends here. We've all worked together on this tax bill, and it's finally come to fruition. Obviously, you hear rules is going to meet at 1 tonight, and hopefully we can get it, the bill passed tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, somewhere thereabouts. The one thing that I want to talk briefly about. When I was in the Iowa Senate, we had a couple, this was in 2017-18, we had a couple with all the provisions that was done in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And there was one area where I missed, and I'll never forget it, it was guilty where I failed a couple. And I had so many businesses come up to me in Iowa and say, hey, you missed something. And I went back, and now I'm focused on international, what international our tax code looks like. And what we did with Guilty and what we did with Fitty and Beat was incredible, how we onshored so much business and had zero inversions. And we wanted to make sure in this tax bill that we keep those things the same. And we did that. We kept all the rates the same because we saw how important it was to our economy and then how we could compete with the rest of the world with our rates, with our corporate rate at 21%, and then what we also did with the money that you could take back in the different parameters. So that's exciting. And then when you start looking at OECD and other things that are happening internationally, all of a sudden everybody's coming to the table. A year and a half ago, I think we were all in London talking with OECD in Paris, and they're sort of blowing us off. And all of a sudden they're at the table and saying, what can we do together? Shocker, isn't it? How administration changes, and all of a sudden they come to the table. So this is really exciting for businesses that do things overseas. And I want to echo what these gentlemen said is, to me, this bill is economics on steroids. And I look so forward to giving it a run, especially when you talk about depreciation, which is a timing issue, but there's automatic depreciation or one-year depreciation on most everything, whether you build a new building, whether you buy a big piece of equipment, 179 depreciation if you're a smaller business. I mean, there's so many great things in here. So with that, I'm excited, and this is going to definitely grow our GDP. Thanks.
You guys did great work, given that you had constraints, that you didn't quite get all the money that you wanted originally, and obviously you're going to have to devote some stuff to SALT, not getting into that issue at all. I'm curious, Senate, it's going to move over to the Senate. You each have senators from your state who are on the Senate Finance Committee, so I'm sure there's some conversations going on. What is it that you want to see improved as the process moves forward or kept in this bill? What's important to you? What one or two items?
I'll just quickly say, the international tax provisions are so important to me because I see what they've done and how, as we move forward, that we keep guilty, fitty, and be all the same. And I'll just finally say, you know, the other thing is we've been working with the Senate back and forth on creating permanency in a lot of these provisions, which again, you want to make sure that businesses know what's happening over the next 5 to 10 years, and you create certainty by doing that, creating permanency.
I think one of the bigger things is don't mess it up. That's probably an important thing. That's probably an important message for the Senate. The other piece is, you know, as we talk through, they have a fewer constraints than we do on the budget side. So the more we can make permanent in this bill, the better off we are, because it provides the certainty for you, for anybody else, to go out and make an investment or go out and, well, even for an individual, go buy the new car. And you know, if you know what your tax rate's going to be, and which helps so much with the economy. So the more we can make permanent going forward, the better.
I want to respond with starting out just I spoke just a minute ago. Everybody needs to give Jason Smith a big shout out. He was the only person in all of Congress talking about one beautiful bill early on. The only person, including the other end of Washington Mall. And the reason he said that because he was here before and he knew how difficult it was. Sure. And it turns out he was right. Very difficult. And Jim, you started out talking about Ronald Reagan. One of the most famous statements he ever made is none of us gets 100%. Take your 80% and go away. Right. Because those who fight for the 20% get the 20% and turn around, look, I lost the 80. So this is an important message for everybody that's currently negotiating for a better bill before tomorrow. Remember, 80%, let's take it and go and live another day for the other 20. And that's the same message that goes to the Senate. This is not easy what's going on right now. Ask the speaker if you don't believe us. Thank you all.